Hi, everyone. Good morning. Good evening. It's nice to see you. Just taking a look at you for a minute. Yesterday, I went to there's a little hole in the wall massage place close to me called Mending. It's run by this very warm, hearty, wonderful Chinese family and associated friends and family, probably. And the husband and wife who run it speak a fair bit of English, but most of the other people who work on you don't. And the woman I had yesterday, when she came in, I've had her before, and she's just incredibly warm. She usually pats me on the cheek at some point, but she just kept saying, "How are you? How are you? How are you?" And it didn't matter. She wasn't actually looking for me to respond, which was great because, I'm face down and my face is all sort of like this, and she wouldn't understand much of what I said, but I could just say, "Good." And she just kept saying, "How are you? How are you?" And then she'd laugh in this kind of warm way. So let's sit for a minute while people are coming on and, you know, can just think, how are you? How are you? How are you? Yeah, so how are you? What's it like to be alive this Sunday in September? And sort of like me yesterday, you don't have to answer, which is nice. You just let whatever appear wash through you. And as you sit, there's a koan about mending. Shenshan was mending clothes when Dongshan asked, "What are you doing?" "Mending," said Shenshan. "How's it going?" asked Dongshan. "One stitch follows another," said Shenshan. Dongshan replied, "We've been traveling together for 20 years, and that's all you have to say?" It's worse than that, actually. He says, "How can you be so clueless?" Shenshan says, "How do you mend, then?" Dongshan says, "With each stitch, the whole earth is spewing flames." It's true that one breath, one moment, one day follows another. But if we're open to it, there's something much more. With each stitch, the whole world is spewing flames. During the meditation, someone's dog came right up to the camera, so I could just see this giant eye sort of staring, and then it slowly revealed itself. So this koan is, I'm aware fire gets a bad rap these days, particularly for a number of my friends on the screen. It's become a very terrifying, destructive, constant force. And in some way, that is some way the earth and reality is speaking to us right now. And it's up. But in another way, there's the fire. There's a great line that Susan Murphy used. It's originally from John, I believe, about the fire that runs through all things, which is us, the fire that lives at the center of our being, that somehow vivifies and animates and warms all of existence so that it can happen. And that's the fire I've been thinking about a lot. And there's in my garden, this flower, I'm going to show it to you. It's kind of, with each stitch, the world is spewing flames. It somehow never grew any petals. It's just this incredible, it's been standing out by itself. This incredible shock of maroon and orange and yellow. And no, it's just been kind of, one flower follows another, all these little flowers appearing. And each is a kind of universe, but this one seems to have really gone out of its way to make a point of it. And this koan is interesting because in the way it reveals how, in some sense, life is just always going along, and we can see it that way. And in another way, the whole universe is appearing and then disappearing in every moment. And that's kind of what it's getting at, that there's this, there's something deeper and vaster and wilder and stranger that's happening. And in meditation, one of the major things we're doing is somehow opening to that, or turning our attention toward that. And so often what you find is what seemed like a very benign or banal or ordinary part of life somehow comes alive in this kind of mind-blowing way. It's often a thing at Sesshin that someone will just come running up and say, I need to show you something. And they show you bees, or they show you a flower, or they show you the way that so I watched someone a few retreats ago stand and watch the bubble that was rising in the hand sanitizer. And he was just absolutely enchanted. That was the universe just appearing every moment. And at first I kind of was like, Dongshan, what are you doing? And then he looked and showed me. And so I watched, and I could just see the delight spread over his face as this happened. And I think often, people come to practice thinking that things are going to settle down, that they're going to, all their troubles or all the disturbances in their mind and in their life are suddenly going to even out. And there's often a moment when someone's been in practice for a while where they say, this is not what I signed up for. This is not what I thought this was, or what we were doing. What gives? In fact, things, the pain points in my life have gotten more acute, or I've become more aware of the ways that I'm completely full of shit, or trying to always control things, or, I thought this was going to make things easier. And I think in the long run it does. But what we're after, particularly in this wild tradition where people yelled and threw things and clapped, and we're after that moment of things spewing flames, life appearing and blowing us open. And really got thinking about this because a few weeks ago, a friend of mine who's not had the easiest uh, relationship with love decided to go to a wedding. And what this really got me thinking is how, what I titled this, which is, it takes courage to enter the territory where everything can appear, where we're not somehow trying to have life be smaller and more predictable or more even or more easy than it actually is. And my friend, in a way, has been someone who's not even really put himself too much in the territory of love because it hurt so much. And the feeling was that if he could kind of protect his heart or expose it only a little bit at a time, that maybe what had hurt would be bearable or manageable in some way. And fortunately or unfortunately, he started having a practice many years ago. And as that's happened, I guess in a way, his ability to tolerate everything that's alive in that territory has increased. And sometimes when more appears, when more hurt or more love or more longing appear, there's been an intense desire to close down because it just feels like it's too much. And there's been two parts he's had to continue to wrangle with, which is the part that hopes and the part that wants to keep the door closed so that pain doesn't keep happening. And so, I don't know, to me, it was kind of brave to go to a wedding, which is, right into the earth spewing flames of this particular territory. And he wrote to me afterwards, and I was just very moved by what he said, which was that being in it, he had to feel all of it. He had to feel all the hurt and all the beauty and all the ways that his heart began to crack open. And he could feel, in his words, the whole heart of the world began to open with his. And the word he used was voltage. The voltage that would go through him was so much greater than he would usually allow himself to tolerate. And he said, basically everything's like that. That if we're not trying to control it, tamp it down, keep it reasonable, not in some way let it destroy us when we're ready, that we're keeping some part of the universe at bay all the time. And in Zen, really, we'd call that having a self. I'm somehow trying to avoid or manage or control something in service of whatever I might be afraid of or find overwhelming or and in a way, one stitch does follow another when you're mending. You're going along in your practice or your life or you're something like that. You can settle into that space, but then all these things you didn't expect appear. Suddenly your business arrangement changes. Suddenly your partner brings something up. Suddenly, I don't know, you lose someone. Suddenly the thing you were cared so much about, I don't know, your heart changes on you in some way. And it's tempting to want to go back to one stitch follows another. But actually, it's tremendously more alive. So much of why we come to this is that things are alive. Let me read you. There's a lot of very good poems in this territory. Let me read you one. Because I think, in a way, as the koan suggests, This is not absent of being very intimate with loss and with depth, with death, because that each moment the world is spewing flames, that moment is then gone. Don't get to carry it with you into the next. You find this when you sit with someone. All of a sudden, whatever you were in changes on you, and it makes precious whatever was. But if you try to hold on, I don't know, I guess we'd call that suffering. So this is a Billy Collins poem. This way. It's called Picnic Lightning, which is it's borrowed from a line from Lolita, in which is written, "My very photogenic mother died in a freak accident, parenthetically, picnic lightning, when I was 3." Which already is a strange line, but sparked something in Billy. So it is possible to be struck by a meteor or a single-engine plane while reading in a chair at home. Pedestrians are flattened by safes falling from rooftops, mostly within the panels of comics, but still, we know it's possible, as well as the flash of summer lightning, the thermos toppling over, spilling out on the grass. And we know the message can be delivered from within. The heart, no Valentine, decides to quit after lunch. The power shut off like a switch, or a tiny dark ship is unmoored into the flow of the body's rivers, the brain a monastery defenseless on a shore. This is what I think about when I shovel compost into a wheelbarrow, and when I fill the long flower boxes, then press into rows the limp roots of red impatience. The instant hand of death always ready to burst forth from the sleeve of his voluminous cloak. Then the soil is full of marvels, bits of leaf like flakes off a fresco, red-brown pine needles, a beetle quick to burrow back under the loam. Then the wheelbarrow is a wilder blue, the clouds a brighter white, and all I hear is the rasp of the steel edge against a brown stone, the small plants singing with lifted faces, and the click of the sundial as 1 hour sweeps into the next. 1 hour sweeps right into the next. 1 hour follows the other, and yet life and death and clouds and lightning. And so courage, yeah. I was talking to someone this week who's not as familiar with our work, and by rumor has heard we're somewhat heretical in our approach, which I found wonderful and delightful, and emphatically confirmed. And he was asking me, well, because I said, well, it's hard when you're taking on these big images and in some way letting the universe appear through you. And he said, well, why? And clearly not having a huge amount of familiarity with the process, he said, why? Why is it hard? And in a certain way, it's hard to explain unless you're willing to try it. But I was in some way trying to describe to him what it's like to just take that step away from knowing who you are and what's going to appear next. And that's, in some sense, that world spewing with flames. That I step beyond holding my sense of knowing anything about what I'm doing, and things appear. Someone told me a dream this week where, and she's been sort of going along in her practice, one stitch follows another. And she's someone who's had real difficulty in confronting things in life, particularly the people she loves. And she had a dream in which she was sort of wildly confronting her father and locked him in a closet and told him he needed to read some feminist literature. And when she woke up, she had this, sort of wild delight in the letting in the energy of what it was like to actually enter the confrontation, what it was like to actually let herself feel what she really feels in relationship to some of her father's beliefs. And you can tell those are the ways that the flames just begin to crack through. And it was wonderful. And to say a little more about my Chinese family yesterday, I was noticing how much I started laughing, actually, that it was called Mend Me, when I realized, oh, that's part of what I'm talking about, but how getting a massage, and I'm a huge fan, unabashed fan of massage, but it's so much like that. You have just this, you have these what seem like very benign, rhythmic encounters with the surface of your skin, with your body somehow. One stitch follows another, and yet with each touch, the world is spewing flames. There's pleasure, there's pain, there's annoyance, there's relief, there's, just over and over. And this is within, only 90 minutes. You can be in many universes at one time in 90 minutes, and they change radically. And you can feel each time the touch is withdrawn, space opens up, and then something new happens, and then space opens up and something new happens. And I guess it's like that. Let me read you another poem. I happened on a poet while I was looking at stuff for this who I'd not heard about before, named Conrad Aiken. And he himself had a fairly tragic beginning in the world with the loss of both his parents, but you can tell, at least in a huge span of his poetry, that somehow this encounter, that being open to the real encounter and being completely unprepared for it, is part of what was interesting to him. So this is called When You Are Not Surprised. When you are not surprised, nor leap in imagination from sunlight into shadow, or from shadow into sunlight, suiting the color of fright or delight to the bewildering circumstance. When you are no longer surprised by the quiet or fury of daybreak, the stormy uprush of the sun's rage over the edges of torn trees, torrents of living and dying flung upward and outward, inward and downward to space. Or else, peace, 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 peace. The wood thrush speaking his holy, holy, far hidden in the forest of the mind, while slowly the limbs of light unwind, and the world's surface dreams again of night, as the center dreams of light. When you are not surprised by breath and breath and breath, the first unconscious morning breath, the tap of the bird's beak on the pane, and do not cry out, come again. Blessed, blessed that you are come again. O light, O sound, O voice of bird, O light and memory too. O memory blessed and cursed with the debts of yesterday that would not stay or stay. When you are not surprised by death and death and death, death of the bee and the daffodil, death of color in the child's cheek, on the warm young mother's breast, death of sense of touch, of sight, death of delight, and the inward death, the inward turning night, when the heart hardens itself with hate and indifference, for hated self and beloved not self. When you are not surprised by wheel's turn or turn of season, the winged and orbed chariot tilt of time, the halcyon pause, the blue caesura of spring and solar rhyme, woven into the divinely remembered nest by the dark-eyed love in the oriole's breast, and the tides of space that wring the heart, while still, the wave of the invisible world breaks into consciousness in the mind of God. Then welcome death, and be by death benignly welcomed, and join again in the ceaseless not knowing from which you awoke to the first surprise. Join again in the ceaseless know-nothing from which you awoke to the first surprise. Kind of a torrent itself, but a beautiful one. And sit for just a little bit and just feel the surprise. With each stitch, with each note, with each breath, the whole earth is spewing flames. It's amazing how the vibrance and the freshness of the world just starts to roar when we get quieter and aren't so sure what we're doing anymore. While we were sitting, I was remembering a few years ago a student going through the refuge process who wanted to sew her own rakusu. And having done this once myself, can tell you it is not that one stitch follows another. This is definitely not what happens when you undertake what seems like a very simple project with very clear instructions. This is not what happens. And especially if you think you know how long it's going to take you. And she had been in the refuge process, which in our school, as you go along, you take up each of the vows as koans and you write your own verse. And so it's that thing that it comes alive in your own heart in some way, which is way more important than trying to adhere to something. And that process had been going all right for her. But as she started sewing, mending, one stitch follows another, she had to confront each of the vows in this incredibly intense, real way, which was like all the ways she impales herself, all her horrendous perfectionism and comparison, all her ways of wanting to assuage herself, everything, every stitch, something would come up. And in a way, the avenue into the process as a living teaching came so alive through that stitching and gave her, I think, the rakusu did not turn out as she had planned. Nothing turned out as she had planned, and yet she loved it because it somehow came to hold her actual psyche and life and the vividness of it rather than some idea. And so I think, Dongshan's sort of pointing at that each moment that appears, each thing that captures you, each thing that's coming through you and offering itself to you, I don't know, probably won't make sense in the long run, but it's yours. It's alive. It changes you to let it happen. So, John Tarrant, I wonder if you have anything you'd like to say.
I do. Thank you. The idea of practice is important to me, is a noble idea, I think. And the practice is something not that we're doing to get better at, but it is life itself. Practice is life. And and there are kind of a couple of parts of it for me. The first part of practice for me was when I learned when I was kind of young and I was working in a very intense environment and it was kind of crazy and fistfights would break out and things like that. So, land rights it was. And people would have vehement disagreements. And and I realized that if I just meditated a couple of times a day, that was really good. And so that somehow that meant that I wasn't caught up with the madness. And then, so that was one part of it. And that part is like you can directly go through the difficulty into the moonlight, I suppose, and then the other part is that the difficulty itself is fine, which is what I think this koan's about. Each stitch is spewing flame, and if you listen to a really good singer or something, you can tell that they're right in it. It's coming out of them. It's coming out of the earth, and it's they're not even trying to be famous or popular or anything. It's just something that's coming through them. And I think life is like that for us. And I think Zen is like that. That's one of the things about Zen. We start out trying to, in an namby-pamby kind of way, smooth everything out and, in a way, squash things. And then we realize that it will reveal itself if we just let it appear. Let whatever needs to appear appear. The magic of life will reveal itself, and there's no need to be perfect about it. In fact, you can't be perfect about it, things like that. So that's what I'm thinking.
It's great. Thank you. Michelle Riddle, you want to say anything?
I I haven't been at a Sunday program in quite some time, so it's really nice. And so I just want to say that, and like listening to the music and the talk and sitting is great. Um, and quickly, Zoom silence is interesting, right? We have Zoom silence, and then there's what am I hearing in the Zoom silence? And neighbors have recently purchased some roosters, and then there's 8 puppies next door and a really crazy owner, and there's football. And it's this cacophony of stuff, in the Zoom silence, and yet you can feel both of them at once. Uh, Basically, this is near and dear to my heart. This idea about the courage that practice takes. That there's and just seeing that, just realizing that, it's like then it's like you're not surprised. It's not like something's going to come along and solve all what you think are your problems in the way you expect. It's so much more interesting than that. But it's that letting go of who we think we need to be, as Tess was saying. And I guess I want to put in a tiny plug for the other part of the koan, one stitch follows another, because I think to me there's different ways of feeling that. And that can almost also describe exactly everything Tess said about the flames. It's like if you're willing to open yourself to uh, the voltage, as you said, the fire, the flames, to what you don't know about yourself and what's there. That also could be like, wow, if I'm not adding anything, if I'm not making any assumptions, if I'm not bringing something to it, then there's a way for me in which each stitch following another is almost another way of describing the world spewing flames for me. But it's when you think oh, that's boring, right? I feel like you were talking about it that way, which is totally legit. Like, oh, there's that. I have control over it. It's like one thing after another, but I know where to put my foot and I know what's going to happen and I know who's doing the stepping. That's not that. So, anyway, I'm just so happy to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. Yeah, yesterday when I went after the massage, I had to stop by a grocery store on the way home, and it's not the usual one I go to. And somehow the way it's constructed, you have to go through all the aisles to get out, which I didn't realize when I entered. And throughout all the aisles are giant singing puppets of various kinds. And you can't you can't escape. You can't skip ahead. You have to go one stitch follows the other. I mean, and as this is happening, I just started laughing to myself, and I thought the whole world is spewing flames right here, right now. And yet, one step follows the other. I'm going to get myself out of here. Allison, you have anything you'd like to say?
Yeah, I was very struck by that line in the koan, the whole earth is spewing flames. And also the poem you read at the very end, I was, oh God, I just didn't want it to end. It was just taking me inside the moment to moment appearance of the surprise of the mystery of that I'm here. and that the universe keeps appearing. And where did it come from, and where does where's the next moment coming from? And so I've been reading uh, Gabriel Garcia Marquez, Love in the Time of Cholera, which is a book that I read maybe in my 20s. And the only thing I remember about it is that I loved it. I remember just feeling a great, I don't know, joy with reading it, but I didn't remember anything about the characters or what happens or anything at all. So I've been reading it again, and John and I were talking late into the night last night in the dark about the book and how Marquez, he describes in a way, he goes through time backwards and forwards, and so that linear time is not in any way established. It's always being undermined through memory and through experience and through the storytelling. And then, so you've got these different layers of the external world, of everything that is happening in the world, which is, I mean, and particularly in Colombia, the world is like always, it's spewing more flames in that country than it is anywhere else. It's just this vivid explosion of a universe out of control and full of beauty and danger, and um, governments which keep coming and going. And so there's that part of the universe where we're trying to manage ourselves in a world which is, in a way, on fire. And then there's this other realm that he describes, which is the interpersonal realm of me and who I'm in love with, or who is in love with me. It's all about love, relationships, and how that's always in flux and changing. You always try to manage that. But then the interesting piece, and I think this is where so much of practice is established, and you were describing it with your student that had gone to this wedding and what they had to, they imagined they might have to endure internally. And I think that's what practice gives us the courage, is that we discover as soon as you start to sit that your inner life, which you thought actually belonged to you and you had some control over, is just as out of control and surprising as the external world. Like it is, in fact, I don't know, maybe even more so, that these things are just appearing and you thought that you felt this certain way about someone. And then the next thing you suddenly, you want to divorce them, or you want to, you want to sell your house, or you want to quit your job. And all of these things are appearing and on fire. You're internally, it's the whole internal life is in flames as well. And what practice gives you is that you're no longer afraid. That's not a threat. Your inner life, your feelings, the images that are coming through you no longer are need to be controlled, and you can let them move through you and appear in with a kind of, as you say, Tess, let them change you. Let your inner life have its own life. In a way, it doesn't have much to do with you. So that's really a remarkable aspect of practice, is you come to know the place that does not move, like in the Buddha's story when he sits under the Bodhi tree. You find the place that does not move, and to not be afraid of your own mind, that's tremendous. Yeah, that's an amazing thing. That's it.
Thank you. It's nice. My wedding friend said one of the things that makes all this possible is having friends, having companions in the Dharma. I'm grateful for my friends. Just because exactly what you were saying. And read you one more Conrad Aiken poem, and then we'll sit for a little while longer. This one's called Melody in a Restaurant. The cigarette smoke loops and slides above us, dipping and swirling as the waiter passes. You strike a match and stare upon the flame. The tiny firelight leaps in your eyes a moment and then dies away as silently as it came. This melody, you say, has certain voices. They rise like nereids from a river, singing, lift white faces and dive to darkness again. Wherever you go, you bear this river with you. A leaf falls and it flows, and you have pain. So says the tune to you, but what to me? What to the waiter as he pours your coffee? The violinist who suavely draws his bow? That man who folds his paper overhears it. 1,000 dreams revolve and fall and flow. Someone there is who sees a virgin stepping down a marble stair to a deep tomb of roses. At the last moment she lifts remembering eyes. Green leaves blow down. The place is checked with shadows. A long-drawn murmur of rain goes down the skies, and oaks are stripped and bare, and smoke with lightning. And clouds are blown and torn apart upon high forests, and the great sea shakes its walls, and then falls silence. And through long silence falls this melody once more. Down endless stairs she goes as once before. So says the tune to him, but what to me? What are the worlds I see? What shapes fantastic, terrible dreams? I go my secret way down secret alleys. My errand is not so simple as it seems. astonishing music today. Thank you, musicians. It's always interesting how some writers are like this. John's Buddha book is certainly like this. There's a circular way we pass through things, and you deepen each time it goes around. It's always interesting to sit and then sit and then sit. Just keeps deepening. If you like sitting, come to Shenshan. It's in a month, and we still have beds, and it's going to be like this, except more, and it would be wonderful to have you there. And don't know, how are we getting out of here, Jordan?
I've vowed to wake all the beings of the world. I've vowed to set endless heartache to rest. I've vowed to walk through every wisdom gate. I've vowed to live the great Buddha. I've vowed to wake all the beings of the world. I've vowed to set endless heartache to rest. And I've vowed to walk through every wisdom gate. I've vowed to live the great Buddha way. I've vowed to wake all the beings of the world. I've vowed to set endless heartache to rest. And I've vowed to walk through every wisdom gate. And I've vowed to live the great Buddha way.
Thanks, Jordan. Thanks, Amaryllis. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for being here. Let me unmute you. Enjoy your Sunday. We'll be definitely here next week.